Think about the last time you stood under the harsh, humming fluorescent lights of a gym locker room. You look in the mirror, pulling at your shirt, feeling this quiet, sinking panic that you simply aren't big enough, lean enough, or imposing enough. You drink your chalky protein shake, scrolling through feeds of impossible physiques, wondering why your body refuses to look like a superhero. But what if I told you that this exact feeling of physical inadequacy wasn't an accident? What if it was carefully engineered in a corporate boardroom decades ago to sell pay-per-views, action figures, and a completely fabricated version of human biology? We need to talk about the mid-2000s, an era where the absolute biggest entertainment juggernaut on Earth hijacked our collective understanding of what a man should look like. I'm talking about World Wrestling Entertainment. If you turned on a television in 2004, you were instantly assaulted by walking, breathing comic book characters. Guys like Batista, Chris Masters, and Heidenreich were carrying around nearly 300 pounds of shredded, vascular muscle with the body fat percentage of a marathon runner. We all just accepted it. We sat on our couches, eating junk food, assuming these guys just worked out really, really hard. But why am I telling you this? Because what we were actually watching was one of the most ruthless corporate mandates ever disguised as athletic entertainment. Now, I have to give a disclaimer here. I am not a doctor, and I am only looking at the publicly available historical data and corporate timelines. But the data tells a terrifying story. The public believed they were watching the pinnacle of human genetics, completely blind to the silent, desperate arms race happening backstage. To get television time in that era, to feed your family and pay your mortgage, you couldn't just be a good wrestler. You had to look like you were carved out of granite. Then, everything shattered in November 2005. Eddie Guerrero, one of the most universally loved performers in the history of the industry, was found dead in a hotel room from acute heart failure. He was only 38 years old. The public mourned a tragedy, assuming it was a random, tragic medical anomaly. But if you look at the corporate response, you realize the empire was in absolute panic mode. 3 months later, WWE suddenly implemented a stringent talent wellness policy to test for drugs and check on cardiovascular health. On the surface, this looked like a benevolent company protecting its workers. They put out press releases, they talked about athlete safety, and they completely controlled the narrative. But look closer at the actual mechanics of what happened next. Dozens of performers were suddenly suspended. Guys who were being pushed as the next big thing came back to television a month later looking visibly deflated, their bodies shrinking in real time in front of millions of viewers. And the moment they shrank, the corporation stripped them of their spotlight. They weren't being punished for violating a health policy. They were being punished because they could no longer maintain the impossible illusion the company demanded. You see, the corporation wanted the aesthetic of a monster, but they refused to absorb the liability of creating one. They essentially handed their talent a loaded gun, told them to pull the trigger to get rich, and then fired them when the gun went off. When I break down exactly how this machine operated, you're going to realize how trapped these performers actually were. To understand the genius of this business model, you have to think about a brightly lit, neon, all-you-can-eat buffet. When you walk into a massive buffet, the restaurant doesn't actually care if you enjoy the food. They only care about the visual overwhelm, the towering chocolate fountains and the endless rows of shiny trays. They want your brain to short-circuit from the sheer volume of choices, so you hand over your credit card. The 2000s wrestling empire operated on the exact same evolutionary trigger. Humans are biologically hardwired to pay attention to physical anomalies, specifically massive, intimidating figures. It triggers our primal survival instincts. The executives knew that nuance, storytelling, and actual wrestling holds don't pop a television rating quite like a 280-pound behemoth throwing a human being through a table. They were manufacturing living action figures. But here is the brutal paradox of that strategy. You cannot safely manufacture a human action figure. The human heart is just a pump, and it was never designed to push blood through 300 pounds of artificially bloated muscle while taking flat back bumps on wooden planks wrapped in canvas. So, how did the empire mask this dark reality? They used the ultimate PR shield. They turned these guys into mainstream superheroes. They sent them to children's hospitals. They put them in movies, video games, and talk shows. They wrapped the entire grueling, bone-crushing industry in a shiny, family-friendly package. If a guy is smiling, in this case, it was a corporate structure completely obsessed with a very specific defensive moat. To protect the empire from financial ruin, they utilized one of the most brilliant and devastating legal loopholes in American business history. They classified their performers not as employees, but as independent contractors. Now listen carefully, because this is where the financial storytelling gets incredibly dark. If you work a regular job and you get hurt moving a box, your company pays for your hospital visit. They cover your physical therapy. But in this empire, despite being told exactly where to be, what to wear, and how to perform, the talent carried the financial risk of their own bodies. If they tore a quad or shattered a knee, they didn't just lose their health. They lost their income. Let me anchor this with a number so you understand the scale. During the mid-2000s, top guys were wrestling roughly 250 days a year. That means you were boarding a flight or driving a rental car to a new city almost 5 days a week. Imagine taking a cross-country road trip every single week, getting in a minor car crash every night at 9 p.m., and then being forced to find a gym at 2 in the morning so you can look like a Greek god for the cameras on Monday. It is biologically impossible to sustain that through sheer willpower and protein powder. The architect of this system knew exactly what they were doing. Back in 1994, the head of the company went through a massive federal trial regarding the distribution of steroids. They survived by the skin of their teeth, implemented a brief testing policy, and let it quietly fade away. By the time the early 2000s rolled around, the aggressive push for massive, mutant-like bodies was back with a vengeance. Why? Because massive bodies look better on high-definition television, and high-definition television drives billion-dollar network deals. The genius of the independent contractor loophole is that it entirely insulates the corporate entity from the physical depreciation of the asset. If a machine in a factory breaks, the company has to buy a new one. If a wrestler's spine degenerates from a decade of abuse, the company simply stops booking them. They release a brief statement wishing them well in their future endeavors, and the corporate stock price doesn't even flinch. This is how you build a billionaire empire. You don't just sell a product. You commodify human ambition. You take a young, hungry athlete who grew up dreaming of being a champion, and you slowly squeeze every drop of physical equity out of their body. By the time they realize the game is rigged, they are in their 40s, completely broken down, and the company has already replaced them with a younger, cheaper, shinier model. When you zoom out and look at the entire board, you realize this is a perfectly designed, inescapable closed-loop system. Think about the path of a normal consumer. You wake up, you feel a little insecure about your body, and you turn on the television. You see a guy with 22-inch biceps effortlessly picking up a car. Your brain subconsciously registers that as the pinnacle of success and dominance. You buy the pay-per-view. You buy the gym membership. You buy the supplements. Meanwhile, on the other side of the screen, the performer is caught in the exact same loop, just from the inside. They know you are watching them. They know they have to stay huge to keep you watching. So they take the pills to mask the pain of the torn muscles, and they take the enhancements to keep the size, because if they stop, the corporate machine will discard them. The fan is addicted to the spectacle, the performer is addicted to the spotlight, and the corporation sits in the middle, monetizing the addiction of both parties. The 2006 wellness policy didn't actually break the loop. It just forced the talent to become stealthier, to find smarter doctors, and to live with an even higher baseline of anxiety. The corporate machine got its PR victory. They could sit in front of congressional hearings and point to their rigorous testing protocols. But the underlying psychological demand, the demand for human beings to look like immortal titans, never really went away. It just evolved. We look back at the 2000s now and shake our heads at how obvious it all was. We look at those massive, unnatural bodies and wonder how we were ever fooled. But the truth is, we weren't fooled. We were active participants. We rewarded the exact physical extremes that were actively killing the performers we claimed to love. The corporation just built the stadium. We were the ones screaming for blood in the arena. You aren't broken for feeling small when you look in the mirror, and you aren't free for going to the gym to fix it. You are just operating perfectly within the parameters of a psychological ecosystem designed decades ago by billionaires who needed to sell you a fantasy. You are just inventory, managing your own depreciation.